Jodie, it's a great joy to have you on Facing the Canon.
Thank you for having me.
I've known you for quite a number of years.
You have.
Well, tell us a little bit about your early childhood. Were you born into a Christian home?
I was, yeah. I grew up going to church, our local Church of England church. Great kids work, which I think is why Mum and Dad moved there. And yeah, grew up going to church, being in Sunday school, all the classic early 80s Sunday school teaching and songs. And yeah, it was a great church. Had still got lifelong friends from there. And yeah, just grew up knowing that God was real. And
so have you always known Jesus?
I think yes is probably the answer, but I think there are probably a few key moments that I would look back at and say were a key part of my journey. So we were lucky enough to travel around the world as a kid and go on lovely holidays. So my dad loves sunsets, and I remember kind of being on a beach watching a sunset, and even at a very young age thinking, someone must have designed this, it's too good.
Yes.
And just that acknowledgement that there's something more out there. And then at 6, I was at a big event. I don't think kids were meant to be there, as far as I remember. I think my parents couldn't find a babysitter. And I was at an event called Dirty Hands, actually, Dave Pope and Doug Barnett and that crowd. And they had missionaries, and they were talking about how to get involved in the world for Jesus. And a missionary from Africa was there, and she spoke. And I remember them doing a calling at the end, saying, if you feel called to missions work, stand up. And I was 6, and I remember just knowing that was a call on my life in that moment. I couldn't put the words to it, only in recent years have been able to put words to it of what it actually was. And I just remember saying to God, I think you're talking to me.
Did you stand up?
No, I said, I'm too little to stand up. People will laugh at me.
Yes.
I'm not standing up, but I'm standing up in my heart. And I remember saying that really clearly. Forgot about it for years. And then, yeah, kept going to Sunday school, kept going to church, and knew that it was a good thing.
Yes.
And knew that church was a good thing, and the people around me were good moral people. But got to about 13, which is that tricky age in life, beginning of teenage years. And I just remember looking around at church, looking around at Christianity as I knew it at the time, and said to God, is it just about being a good person? Because if Christianity and being a Christian is just about being a good person, I'm not sure I'm that bothered. I can help an old lady across the road. You don't need God in your life to help an old lady across the road. You don't need God in your life to be kind. I said, but if there's more to it than that, I want to know. And just started to meet people who talked about the Holy Spirit and talked about having a relationship with Jesus. And for me, that was pivotal. And so it's like, there is more to it than being a good person. It's actually about a relationship with God. And it's about knowing him and trusting him and following him. And there's this Holy Spirit, and he's awesome. Just God is alive and real. And that for me was pivotal. And there have been peaks and troughs over the last 20 years, but yeah, that's 20 plus years now. But yeah, that's probably a few key moments through my childhood.
You then went off to Cambridge, and you studied education there.
I did, yeah.
And qualified as a teacher.
I did, yes.
And you worked as a teacher.
I did, yeah, I worked as a nursery and reception teacher. And
then from there, you left and went off to Tenerife.
Yes.
Why did you go to Tenerife?
Because 4 and 5-year-olds weren't crazy enough for me, so I went to see the 18 to 30s. I had no intention of going to Tenerife at all. I had my career planned out. From early age, wanted to be a teacher, and loved the idea of being a teacher. And so that's what I set my mind to. I did a 4-year degree in education, got a job in a school where I knew the head and the deputy head, and they created a job for me, which was very kind and generous, and worked with them for a couple of years. But in my very first year of teaching, anybody who's a teacher knows how exhausting it is. And there's an NQT, which is your first year of teaching. You've really got to try hard and get that qualification. And I was working really hard. It got to the Easter holidays of my very first year teaching. And I said to my mum, I'm exhausted. I need a holiday. And so we looked up I was going to say on teletext then, that gives away my age, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Looked up on the computer,
Yes.
last minute holidays, and Tenerife came up. And the church I was going to at the time had an outreach in Tenerife called The Living Room, which is still going today. And it was set up for the workers, so mostly British workers, aged 18 to 30, who go out to Tenerife, sometimes on holiday and end up staying longer, but definitely in look of a party lifestyle and a life to escape, generally, from the UK. And mess happens. It's a crazy island, and people, we always used to say, and we still say it now, people got chewed up and spit out by the lifestyle on the island.
Yes.
And so this place called The Living Room was like a little oasis, and it was a drop-in centre for the workers there during the day, and then at night go out on the streets to the bars and clubs to chat with the workers and say, hey, we're from the Christian Centre, just want to say, you know, we're here for you. And yeah, that was going on. So that's what my church were involved in. And so I said to our church leader, I'm going on a holiday next week to Tenerife. Is there anything you want me to take out for the guys in Tenerife? You know, the generous person that I am.
Yes.
I'll give some of my luggage allowance. Back in that day, you did get 20 kgs for free. And I offered my luggage allowance, and so I think I took a few books out, and he just said to me, oh, make sure you go up there and make sure you spend some time up there. I was like, okay, whatever.
Yes.
And went up to the Living Room on holiday. I thought, oh, it's a good place. It's like a youth centre for workers here. Great. I'm earning a salary now. I can give some money and help it keep ticking over. That night, I went out on the streets with them, and my heart broke. And it's like taking the rug out from underneath my feet. My idea of being a deputy head by the time I was 30 was suddenly thrown up into question. And the first guy I met on the street that night, one of the workers, said, all right, love, my name's Liam. I'm going to sleep with you for the rest of your holiday. I said, sorry, Liam, no, you're not. And just that's the kind. Yeah, I was going from 4 and 5-year-olds, you know, shouting and screaming, to 18 to 30s, and just knew God was pulling me in that direction and calling me there. And to cut an even longer story short, I ended up taking a sabbatical from school, which is unheard of in your first year. Took a sabbatical for a term, and then at the end of that academic year, moved out to Tenerife for 5 years.
So what was the main work that you did for over 5 years?
Being a friend.
So
Being a friend to the 18 to 30s, the people who go out to live there. So often it's people who are running away from the UK for whatever reason. It could be as simple as boredom of the 9 to 5. It's not always a horrific story. But there are people who are, you know, broken families, dysfunctional relationships, heartache, all sorts of backgrounds, like there is in any micro community. You know, it was just a community that was kind of really focused. And a lot of people just wanting a good time, adventurous people. But unfortunately, a lot of the work that they did supplied free alcohol, and often that can lead into addiction and spiral down into other addictions. And yeah, just...
And did you see lives transformed?
Yeah. God was amazing. And the thing that struck me time and time again is that nearly every person we had a conversation with who ended up, you know, coming to church with us or getting baptized or making a decision for Christ, whatever it was, they always had someone back at home who was praying for them. And I think that's the thing I've taken away most from my time there, is the importance of prayer. That actually, when we ended up the conversations with people, oh, my auntie's a Christian, she says she's been praying for me for years. And you're like, ah. Oh.
Yes.
And just to encourage people, if you've got someone in your life who's not yet a Christian, pray, pray, pray.
Yeah.
It really does change things. And so we're still hearing, I've been back in the country for 7 years, and still hearing now stories of people whose lives have been turned around and changed. Really, really.
It's inspiring,
yeah,
isn't it?
and a real privilege to be a part of as well.
Yeah.
Real privilege.
You're now a director of a charity called Beyond Ourselves.
I am.
What's the meaning or the statement behind Beyond Ourselves?
Well, it's got a great acronym, BO, which we did not think through. So I tried to put a spin on it and say, with a fragrance of Christ. No. No. Beyond Ourselves was set up by my brother and I. And just that heart, you know, growing up in London, growing up in the groups of friends that we did, you know, we were privileged to go to private school, both went to Cambridge University, and that the world owes us something, or I have to get the most I can out of the world for me, and it's about, you know, what car I drive, what house I live in, what job I get, and all of those things that measure success. And we just want to say, no, life's not about us, it's about others, and we want to make a difference for others. And so going beyond ourselves in that way, but also pointing beyond ourselves to God as well.
And you set up it was a family charity.
Yeah, family business charity, yeah.
A family business charity that was set up how long ago?
In 2009.
And the initial focus was with Zambia.
Yes.
So how did you select Zambia out of all the countries of the world?
That's a very good question. That actually wasn't down to me. That was my brother and God. And we have a motor industry. We're in the motor industry and have businesses around London. And he had a dream one night as he was thinking about how to use the profits to make a difference in the kingdom. And he had a dream one night about a mechanics college in Africa. And you do know my brother, but for those who don't know my brother, he didn't have that 6-year-old moment of wanting to go to Africa. He never wanted to go. He likes the comfort of home. And he had this dream of a mechanics college in Africa. And the next day, a family friend of ours phoned up and said, I've got a friend in Zambia who's a bishop, and he wants his church to really reach out into his community. And he's wondering about setting up a mechanics college. Are you interested? And I think you have to be really thick to say, So he said, I think God's doing something here. And so he went over to Zambia. And when he was over there, he came across a mechanics college that already existed in that town, who are now very good friends of ours and are doing an excellent work, a Christian-run mechanics college, offering skills training, life skills. They do the City and Guilds. They're just incredible. Mechanics for Africa, they're just a great organisation. And he came across those and said, that's already happening in this town. What else is going on in your church? And so he met with pastors who, within their church building, had set up schools, makeshift schools, to offer education to kids who wouldn't otherwise be in school. So orphans and vulnerable kids who couldn't afford the government fees to go to school. And these churches had just said, we want to serve our community, and had 1 or 2 volunteer teachers, about 150 kids, all in one room, grade 6 in one corner, grade 2 in another. And the teacher in me goes, imagine the noise. And and just said, we love your vision, we love your heart, how can we work alongside you? And that's how it started, and that's why it's Zambia. It was a friend of a friend.
How many, now, basically you have a number of schools. How many schools have you got?
So we partner deeply with three schools in Ndola and Kitwe in the Copper Belt of Zambia.
And how many pupils in those schools?
So that's about 950 pupils.
And how many children have gone through your schools?
I should have done the maths before I got here, shouldn't I?
A lot.
A lot, yeah. We're in the thousands, yeah. So we have graduating classes every year from grade 7. And
how do you fund the 3 schools so that they work financially? So
with anything, any charity that's starting, any partnership that's starting, any need that's being met, often it's done, let's just get the money in, let's just see how we get this. And so we didn't invent the wheel, reinvent the wheel. We just said child sponsorship seems to work for a load of other people, let's go for child sponsorship. And so we offer a child sponsorship programme for our 3 schools. So for £12.50 a month, a child can be educated. Teachers' salaries, we get contribution towards teachers' salaries. There's a feeding programme every day, uniform, school resources.
So do you feed all the children?
Not me personally, but yes, we do. Yeah, we have great catering teams. Yeah,
and all the children who come to the school are fed?
Every child is fed every school day, yeah.
How do you select which children can come to your school? Let's say there's a family and they've got 8 children.
Yeah.
Do you take all the children, or do you select?
The beauty of how we work is that we don't own the schools or run the schools. They're all owned and run by the local church, by the local school. And so decisions like that don't fall on our plate. And so each school has their own criteria, and they do the admissions themselves and select families appropriately.
But demand for places must exceed the places that you've got.
They do, yeah. And that's a tension we live with, in that we believe in quality education. So we don't just want to offer education, which is just in name. So a child is in the classroom, but actually there are 70 kids in the classroom, so how are they possibly getting taught? And so we try and cap the classes between 35 and 45, so that each child is getting quality education. And that does mean that not everybody can come to school. But what we've found is that by offering 2 children out of the 8 in a family relatively free education, which is what we offer, the families can, some more money is released to enable others to go to the government school.
Give us some examples of what you've seen in the families of the children that have been to your schools. What difference has it made?
I think for us, we're in our first full cycle, as it were. So this January, we have our very first grade 12 students. And just to put that into context, in Zambia, for every 19 children that start primary school, only 2 will finish high school.
Yes.
And so to have kids from the primary schools that we're working with actually get to grade 12, the final year of high school, and complete that is in itself a miracle and transforming for a family. Because when you get grade 12, you get job opportunities. And what's amazing is we don't actually partner with high schools. But what we've seen happen within families is they're starting to really value education. And so because the kids are getting a quality primary education, the families see the value in that, and so are making the effort to send their kids to high school. We do offer bursary system through high school, but we don't actually partner with any high school. So when people say, oh, what do your kids do when they get to secondary? Their families are sending them. And to see kids entering into grade 12 with potential and with opportunity ahead of them is so exciting, because if you get a whole load of children in a community all graduating or with potential or with ability to go and get a job, that will change a community. That will start to shift things. There'll be an income coming to a family. One income in a family can change everything. And I can't wait for the next 5-10 years to see, we believe in community transformation, and genuinely to see communities transformed because a kid went to primary school. Isn't that? And
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that it's a long-term,
yes.
There's no quick fix. There's no quick fix to poverty. There's no quick fix.
So you're looking forward to your graduates going into work and seeing what's going to happen as a result. Now, your schools are Christian.
They are, yes.
So its roots are Christian, its ethos, its foundation. Do families who are not Christian send their children to your schools?
They do. We have Muslim kids in our schools because it's turning out to be the best school in the area. So.
And how do the parents perceive you being Christian?
Oh, being Christian, okay.
Do they know that you do a good job?
Yeah.
And do they respect the fact that you are Christians?
Yeah, absolutely. They have no problem. The school is in the church. And so there's no hiding it. It's not, we're not really Christian. It's actually in the church. This is the whole point, was the church wanted to make an impact on their community. And so this is the church making an impact on their community.
Yeah.
It's very open, and people know they're Christians, and teachers pray with their kids before every class. That's the heart.
And do you find that many of the children want to know about Jesus and be followers of Jesus as a consequence of being at your schools?
I think that Zambia is a very Christian country anyway, so talking about God and going to church is a very everyday conversation out there. What we're finding is that we're starting to put into place discipleship programs for the kids in the schools to go deeper with Jesus. And it's a bit like, I guess, my own journey in a completely different cultural context, but they're good people, but what does it really mean to follow Jesus? And so to start to unpack some of that with them, rather than just Christianity is about being good, and just to start to disciple and do groups with the older kids in particular.
Yes. What do you think, Jodie? What does it mean to follow Jesus?
I think those questions we can only ever answer from our own experience. So for me, to follow Jesus is to know that I was made on purpose, that I was made for a purpose. And I know that sounds twee, but to know that I'm here for just a short time, and that heaven is my home, and that while I'm here, there we can see his kingdom come. And so to follow Jesus means to know God, to know him as a saviour, but to know him as a friend, to know him as my hope, as my joy, as my peace. To know, the verse I hold on to the most is John 10:10, that he came to give life and life to the full. And
Yes.
that abundant life, that full life, that a life full of freedom, a life full of joy, a life full of peace, a life full of hope is within our grasp. And I just so long for people to know that to follow Jesus means you can have a full and abundant eternal life. And that's what it means for me, I think, is that it's life, but not as we know it. It's a hold on with both hands, because you don't know where this is going to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zambia, Jodie, is one of the poorest countries in the world.
Yeah.
And it has a huge AIDS, HIV problem in the country. Why do you think Zambia is such a poor country?
I think there are many factors. It's landlocked, which is a problem, in that, when things need to be imported, it's expensive to get things into Zambia. I think that's one very quick answer. I think there's the issue of they're a young country, so they only became independent 52 years ago.
Yes.
So it's an immature country. I think the major resource that they have, copper, has been exploited. I think that they have been taken advantage of in a huge, huge way by many countries, which I'm not going to name.
Yes.
But they've been exploited and taken advantage of, and continue to be taken advantage of as well. And yeah, I think those are three major contributing factors, and that soon the mineral will run out. And I'm worried for their future. I'm not sure they're building an industry for the future yet.
Are you confident, though, that your graduates from your schools will find good employment? Or is that a concern?
It's a concern, so that's something we're working on. So what we've always hoped to do, because the schools are not ours, we're just partnering with them, and we look to exit at some point. And we know it's a long journey, but our hope is that the schools are self-sustainable, both educationally, professionally, and financially. And that's the biggie. But we've always longed for that, and that to always be the end goal. And so our hope has always been to set up businesses and social enterprise around the school communities to bring profit to the school, but also to provide employment and economy to the local community. And so with our first grade 12s graduating in 2017, that is a concern for us. So we're exploring business ideas as we speak, and social enterprise opportunities, and we'll run a work-ready program for our students, so that when they finish grade 12, they go into a work-ready program. What we have been blessed with in Zambia is a growing middle class somehow, and we've had 5 shopping malls built in the last 5 years in the areas where we work. And so there are job opportunities out there for grade 12 graduates. And so we want to make sure we get ours ready for that. Yeah.
You did one fundraising thing that you did. You wanted to get shoes for everybody to go to school, because obviously the shoes that they had were not adequate.
Not in good condition.
Not in good condition. And how did you convey that to people to respond to that particular need?
That was a social media campaign. Very simply just took pictures of loads of tatty shoes and just said, actually, we don't want to put our sponsorship costs up, but our sponsorship goes towards uniform, but shoes are super expensive. And so could we just do a campaign for shoes? And we did it before Christmas. And so people bought a pair of shoes for Christmas in the UK, where they just received a card. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel. It's done by many, many charities. And we were overwhelmed by the number of shoes. And so in fact, we had so much money come in, everybody got a pair of socks as well.
So you managed to get shoes for everybody?
Yeah, everybody that needed them, yeah.
Everyone that needed a new pair of shoes?
Yeah.
Now, you're running, basically, you're overseeing 3 schools, currently with, did you say 800?
950 to 1,000, yeah.
Students. And it works.
It does. To our amazement, it works.
Why don't you do more schools?
I didn't know it's going to be this kind of interview.
But because there's great need, isn't there?
There is. Yeah.
Do you feel that, hey, we've worked a model that's working? I mean, what if somebody called you from Mozambique and said, we've heard that you're running these 3 schools, and we'd love those schools to happen in Mozambique.
Yeah.
How would you respond to that?
So we again, another tension that we live with is, and the phrase we've been using is, do we go deep or do we go wide? And for us, we prayed about it for a long time as a team, and we felt God say, go deep. And if we truly believe in community transformation, then it's going to take a long time and it's going to take a lot of effort. And we felt really strongly that we wanted to see complete community transformation with the 3 communities we work with. And it starts with the school, but then there's a layer of business, and then there's a layer of and so that's what we felt. But interestingly, as soon as we made that decision, we then have been connected with other community schools around our area, which we have got influence over, and we're helping to train and journeying along the journey that we've had, but without the financial responsibility, which is a real blessing, and without the legal responsibility as well. So we're managing to have a wider influence and impact than our 3 schools, and yet still go deep and see complete community transformation within the schools we're in. So my answer is, at the moment, that's what we feel I'm happy to share our story, though, and to encourage others to do the same.
Which is great.
Yeah. I'm not saying never.
No.
In fact, I have a strong feeling it's probably not never. But for right now, it's just Zambia.
For right now, let's go deeper.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful, Jodie, that you and your brother Ben and your parents basically decided to invest the profits of your business to help people less fortunate around the world. And as a consequence of that, you now have 3 schools with over 1,000 students, and you're changing their lives and their families' lives. And it's a wonderful thing that you've done, and it's wonderful work. And we salute you and your brother and your parents. Well done.
Thanks,
Jodie
John.
Collins.